Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Spring Forward podcast. I'm your host, Spring Richardson-Perry, and today we have a very exciting show for you. Jennifer Lemmert, she is an award-winning PR and communications consultant. She has over 20 years of experience, guys, supporting heavy hitters in healthcare, hospitality, and finance. She helps executives shine and she helps employees connect, making a powerful impact with smarter branding and engagement strategies. She's based in the Washington, D.C. area, where she's a wife to a Navy Reservist and a mom to three boys under 7. Oh my goodness, I know the struggle. So anyway, guys, help me welcome Jennifer.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, Spring. I don't know how I'm supposed to follow up that hype message, that hype talk.
Oh my goodness. Listen, we were like literally just talking about the kids and as I was saying that, I totally forgot all of your kids were under 7. Like that is nuts.
Yes.
Only 2 of mine are, and then the other 2 are 8 and 12. So
yeah, well, I thank you for giving me hope that there is life when they get a little bit older. Mine are 7, 5, and 2.5, and they are all crazy. So our house is very loud and chaotic. It's quiet now because nobody's at home, thank goodness. So we can actually have like a real conversation.
That's awesome. Well, I'm excited to dig in today because we're going to be talking about career transitions and how to build and sustain a successful business and balance that with your professional ambitions. And so I really thought this was appropriate given that both Jennifer and I are mompreneurs and we're always trying to find this. I don't want to say balance, it's more like an integration of our work life and this home life and just trying to figure out how not to lose our freaking minds, right? So I just want to kind of get started and learn about your journey. How did you get to this moment in business and in your career where you are now? I know that you decided to leave your corporate job and do your own thing. So like, what influenced that and what helped you to really make that decision?
I'm a huge New Year's resolutions person. So in January 2020, if you can believe it, my New Year's resolution was to find a different career path. I'd been in corporate forever. I had a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old. I was tired of commuting. I was kind of burned out on my job itself. And I didn't know if I should go after a promotion. Should I find a new job? Was I just going to have, the same situation, but in a different place? So I thought, I'm going to figure out what's next. I'll freelance. And then fast forward to the pandemic, and the decision kind of was made for me because I was furloughed like so many other people from their jobs. And that fantasy of what it was going to be like to be a stay-at-home mom and have all this time was shattered very, very quickly. I think by day 2, I was like praying I could get back into an office somewhere, which I never thought would happen. So suddenly I had no job. I had these little kids and it was time to figure out what did that really mean. So I got busy getting my LLC, talking to people, getting the paperwork in order and figuring out, what did I want to do with the rest of my life?
Yeah, and I'm always interested to hear like your family dynamics in terms of making this decision because you didn't decide to leave your 9 to 5. It was sort of decided for you. But at the same time, like what was that dynamic like between you and your husband as y'all were having this discussion while you were making these decisions?
Oh my gosh, you're taking me back to the dark places of pandemic life. My husband was really supportive. So I will say that. He said, you've wanted to do something different. Use this time to figure out what it is you want to do. And, I was doing that during nap time. I was doing that after the kids went to bed, hitting the phones, having virtual conversations with people. And I knew that I knew I was good at what I did. I didn't know if I could make that work as a business of one. It's very easy and safe when you're in a corporate environment because you can try different things. When you're out on your own, it's kind of that do or die moment. And, I was like, well, I can do everything. Who will hire me to do anything, which is the wrong approach. But you learn so much. There was no opportunity to really think about failing because everybody was in this weird time. People didn't have childcare. People were working at home for the first time. People like me were trying out new careers. So there was a lot of room to grow and figure things out in a safer environment than I think I even realized it at the time.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, right? It's like either sink or swim with
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurship, right? You have the corporate comfort of having a stable paycheck, whether you hit the
Right.
ball out of the park or whether you flop a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're on your own, it's like I got to get this right because I can't afford to miss the ball on this swing. So, but you do sort of have a little bit of cushion when you have a supportive partner by your
Absolutely.
side as well. And so I always like to highlight that because as people are making these decisions, like what does your support system, your network look like? So thank you
It's
for
so
that.
important. I mean, it's so important. There's no way to put in the level of effort that's required to run a successful business if your partner is not also on board with you, because somebody's got to agree to do drop off and pick up when you can't do it. Somebody's got to agree to boil some pasta for dinner if you've got a deadline. There's no way to do it on your own if you have kids and your partner is not actively working with you, because if they're not actively working with you, they're working against you. It's never going to be a successful business if you're not both on board.
Oh, I agree. And just when you're saying who's going to boil the pasta, like I was just talking to one of my amazing church members this morning, and she called, and it was truly God sent. She's
Mm.
like, Spring, I'm like, I need more stuff to do because she's retired. And so
Oh, okay.
she doesn't like to sit still for too long. And she's like, so what do you need help with? She said, because I know you always have a lot going on. I was like, oh, thank you for calling because I didn't want to burden anyone. But let
Wow.
me tell you what you can do.
Oh, that's
Like,
awesome.
that was amazing. I had like this laundry list of things that I need to do just this week and next week, not to
Yeah.
mention all the coming months coming up. But it was just truly God sent. And so when that network again is so important as you're thinking about stepping out on your own,
Hmm.
doing your own thing, having that support system to know, okay, am I doing this right? Am I not doing this right? If I don't do this right, are you going to support me and help me until I get it right? Like, you know what I mean? So I really appreciate that. And the fact that your husband was really, really, supportive in that, because sometimes that's not always the case. But
Hmm.
thinking about that too is because thinking about building that community, that network of people, season 2 is all about building community and building that network. And so can you share with us how fostering community relationships has played a role in problem solving and propelling your business forward at this point?
Yes. So community building starts way before you ever even think about quitting your job. You can't quit your job and then say, I'm going to build a community to support me. That's something that has to be embedded into who you are as a person long before. I didn't realize that until I left my job and started talking to people and realized I had so many more people on my side than I even realized. I had so many cheerleaders I didn't even know who would be there to support me along the way. So if you're in your corporate job now, be the person that's getting coffee with people, be the person that's, meeting people for lunch. I used to plan a bunch of like cheesy office functions, and I think back now and I'm kind of embarrassed about it, but people remember that stuff. They remember who you are, they remember how you treated them, they remember if you came through on a project. Like, stay in touch with people because you don't know when you're going to encounter them down the road. Luckily, I never burned any bridges, as far as I know, when I was in my corporate life. So that when I did step out on my own and I was calling people and saying, like, hey, you did this 10 years ago, what would you advise me to do? Or do you remember when we worked on this project? Like, how did we approach that? People are so willing to help you if you've been nurturing those relationships all along. So for me, that was a huge piece of it. Now, as an entrepreneur, I've met so many other women entrepreneurs, women in communications. Many of them are moms. Uh, and it's like, why don't we just all help each other? Instead of us all working in these different silos, the pond is big enough. There's enough money. There are enough projects. There are enough clients. We can all help each other. Early on in my business venture, I made a mistake that cost me a lot of money. I trusted somebody I shouldn't have trusted. They burned me. And I was like, whoa, that shouldn't have happened. I should have had or people in place who I could have trusted to figure this out first. So I decided that was never going to happen to me again. And I just gathered together all the email addresses, phone numbers, whatever, of women that I had been meeting, and started a Slack network and was like, hey, we're all doing the same thing in slightly different ways. How can we help each other? This is a safe space to share advice, to get your questions answered. If you need to hire somebody, if you're looking for work, like how can we help each other and encourage one another? And then we can all be successful. And that has been a huge game changer for me, to be able to nurture that community, but then also see some of those connections happen right in front of my eyes.
That's awesome. That's what I love to hear, right? Women helping women move forward, and not just, and I don't ever want anybody to think that, oh, we're leaving the men out or we're excluding the men, because it's not the case. But for so long, women have not had this business identity, I guess we can say, in a sense, right?
Yeah.
We for so long had an identity within the home. So now building that identity outside of the home, I just think it's so important that we encourage each other, and that we are that community for each other and that network of support for each other to continue to build build that reputation, that career, whatever that ambition is outside the home, because we are capable of doing it.
Right.
Running a household ain't easy.
It's not. I mean, the critical thing is finding people that you trust. You can't let anybody into your circle. Find the people that you trust, people you've known for a long time, people who have been vetted by people that you trust, that sort of thing. To build that type of like inner circle community, I would say. I mean, if you look at your entrepreneurial circle, really, there are just different circles of trust, different circles of people who you've interacted with. You got to have your tight, close knit hype squad really at the center of that, the people who are, know where all the bodies are buried and will help you along the way. And then you just go out from there. I mean, everybody doesn't belong in that inner sanctum, but as you go along, you can kind of identify like who should be in there, who would you go out on a limb for, those types of people you want to keep close.
Yeah. You said circle of trust. You made me think about Meet the Fockers.
I love those movies. So I probably stole it from that movie.
Oh my goodness. Well, okay. So I want to jump into the PR stuff now. And so let's talk about branding, right? How do you differentiate between a personal brand and an executive brand? And why is that distinction important?
This is an awesome question. I work with leaders every day on this stuff, how to create an executive brand. And that's everything from talking to the media to sharing their perspective and thought leadership on different issues. It's engaging employees. It all kind of fits together in that executive brand. So this question comes up all the time. And when I coach people, we really talk about the crossover between your personal and executive brands. It's up to each of us to decide how much overlap there's going to be. So it's really a blend. The personal and the executive are a blend, but they both have to be authentically you. You can't be one way in your personal life and then someone completely different in your executive life and think that the two are going to somehow magically coexist. It doesn't work that way. People are smart enough to see through it. So your personality, your values, your passion areas, your expertise, your experiences, all those things come together, and you get to decide how to share that with the world. So for me, personal brand is how do I want my family and friends to know me? And on the other hand, my executive brand is how do I want my clients to know me? So if we look at those side by side, personal brand, how do I show up at the neighborhood barbecue? How do I show up at the kid's birthday party? I'm going to be outgoing, warm, chatty, interested in other people's experiences. lean into those qualities that attract other people to you, because those are the ones that give you credibility. That goes for personal and professional life. And you practice that with your personal brand every day. So there's your foundation. Your personal brand always has to be your foundation because that's truly you. Then you layer on your executive brand. So when I'm meeting with a client, I'm still very personable, but I'm there to share my expertise. I'm going to counsel them to be the very best they can be in whatever situation they're in. I'm there to be a sounding board, to call out red flags, all the things that I would probably not do in my personal life, right? I'm not going to the kid's birthday party showing up as a parenting expert, for example. Anybody who knows me can attest to that. I'm going to be honest, but I'm going to be more measured than I am at home. I'm going to be funny, or try to be funny, but I'm not going to be as sarcastic as I would be with my friends. You're not hiring somebody. Nobody's hiring me to be an order taker. They're hiring me because I have knowledge and I'm going to help them up level their communications. I'm going to help them achieve their goals. So in a business situation, always lead with the personal and then close with the executive brand. And the way I do that, I want to know who you are. I want to know what interests you outside of work first. Then let's talk about the business we came here to do.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? So you're still a person, a human, and you still have a very personable way of being.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we need to exert this level of professionalism and this executive presence.
Right.
As we keep hearing, what does that term mean to you? Like, I just keep hearing that. What does that mean?
Executive presence.
Mm-hmm.
I think in every client engagement, I think it depends on your industry as well, but every client engagement, you have to kind of like meet the client where they are. So if my client is a hot mess mom, like I am most days when I'm not on camera, like I'm going to meet her at that point. Like we're going to talk about what are the kids up to, that sort of thing. And then we jump into business. If I'm working with, someone who's in a very buttoned up industry, I'm going to show up buttoned up every single time. Like we're not going to talk about hot mess mom stuff, right? Let's talk about the weather. We'll talk about like lighter topics, that sort of thing. So I try to match how I show up with the vibe that the client is putting out, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
But you don't want to skew too far in the personal. I was just talking to my husband about that. I feel in some cases now, like post pandemic, so many people are kind of in this overly informal, less professional, we're all just struggling to survive world. And we've boomeranged back a little bit. So I think we have to get back to being a little bit more formal and a little bit more respectful on the engagement that you're approaching. But I always just try to match my energy to the one that my client is putting out.
Yeah, I agree. And so I would definitely say that I feel like we've gotten a little bit informal as well, and that we need to kind of scale it back a little bit, because a lot of times when you start working somewhere and you've worked there for a while, you start to make friends that you hang out with outside of work. And so when you get to be on that personal level, then how you show up informally is fine. But before you get to that point, there's still a level of formality that needs to be had. And I think we kind of forgot about that, like you said, with the pandemic. So it's a shift that's sort of happening. But I want to go back to this and really highlight this, because you have a lot going on, just like I do, in terms of the kids, family, business, the whole mompreneur shebang, right? And so how do you balance all of that? What strategies do you have in place to manage your different roles effectively?
Gosh, I am not a very structured person. You could probably give me a lot of advice on this, balancing it all. I think the biggest thing that I do to keep myself sane is really being on top of a calendar system and really chunking out my time. You said it earlier, we don't really have a lot of balance. Everything is integrated. So I have to build out on my calendar. It's not just meetings. It's like, how much time do I need to work on this project? Do I need to work after the kids go to bed? Do I need to save a chunk on the weekend? And just having a schedule that I can really adhere to. That's the only way I stay sane. It's not very often when you're a mom that you can work like a straight 10 hours, right? There's pickup, there's drop off, there's some, school called because somebody's running a fever today. You just have to you have to have your schedule in place, and then, give yourself enough time to flex up or flex down depending on what's going on in your life. And I think you have to work with clients that can handle sort of that non-traditional schedule, right? Like if you need to shift things, being able to, you don't have to tell your client every single thing that's going on in your life, but just be able to work that flexibility, because that's sort of one of the reasons why we're all out here doing the entrepreneur thing. We didn't want the rigid life of being in corporate anymore. We wanted a different way of approaching things. So that's, yeah, I'm not super structured. What's your best tip? Give me your advice.
I
You make it work with 4 kids.
I am very much all about a schedule, and down to the T. Like in the morning times, I'm usually up between 5 and 5:30. I'm like,
Wow.
okay, it's gonna take me. It's like I know I have to pump in the mornings for the baby, so I can send her with some bottles. So I'm like, okay, I know it's gonna take me 10 minutes to pump, and then when I do that, I have to get her dressed. So it's gonna take me another 10 to 15 minutes to get her dressed, and then I have to do hair for my older daughter. I have to do her hair. So I'm like, then I know it's going to take me about another 10 minutes to do her hair. Then I've got to get dressed. It's going to take me about 20, 30 minutes. So I'm like, literally
every minute
is accounted for. And within the business, I try to automate things as much as possible. And so like, for instance, just inquiring about being on the podcast, what happens, like there's a link where someone can put their email address, their name, and then they send that in, then it'll automatically send you back the next steps, which would be to fill out the questionnaire and a schedule and introduction. And so these are things that really helps me, because I don't have to physically be there to make these things happen. It just kind of automatically happens because I have these automations in place. And that's what's really helpful on the business side. For helping me to stay organized. But then too, like planning out my days and my weeks and how I'm going to do things, that's like a whole other story, trying to get that in place and get that together. And like with you and I, we ended up having to reschedule because we had connection issues before. And then just recently they had the issue with the cell phones. That was another thing where I had to reschedule things from that day, because I couldn't get in touch with anybody. So it was just emails and text messages if I was on a Wi-Fi. And so, you have to give yourself grace too.
Oh, definitely.
Because something's always going to pop up. And like, even I want to say last week it was, the baby had a fever. So she had to stay home a couple of days. So it was like, okay, now am I really going to be able to get any work done?
Right.
And the answer is no.
Not really.
Not really.
Yeah. You reminded me too, as far as like automating stuff, I try to outsource the things in the business that I am not good at, the things that take me so much more time than would take somebody else. So the bookkeeping stuff, I pay a separate bookkeeper to do all my financial stuff, because I am terrible at math and terrible at getting things in on time. So they tell me like exactly when I need to pay my taxes, how much I need to pay. This is the date, like all those kinds of things, just to completely outsource the pieces that are a struggle for you. I've outsourced graphic design. I could sit and like do basic stuff, right? Somebody else can whip that out much more quickly, and I can pay them to do that, and then it's done and I don't have to think about it. So I would echo what you're saying, to outsource some of those things, those admin type things that take a lot of time and take your focus away from the work you really want to be doing.
Yeah. It's hard for me to kind of do that when we talk about outsourcing, because I can do all the things, not that I should be doing it, but like sometimes I'm really like, I really have fun being creative. And so I get like lost in my creativity sometimes. And I'm just doing just all these different things that I'm trying to promote at
Mhm.
one time. And so, yes, I probably do need to start outsourcing more so I can get my time back. But that's my biggest problem is like, just because I can doesn't mean I should. Like,
Right.
I, I know that I can do the things, but I need my time back.
I mean, that's something that's advice I wish somebody had given to me early on, was to not try to do all the things, because especially when you've reached a certain point in your career, you've done a lot of things, and when you're still trying to figure out what is my business proposition. Like when I started out, somebody asked me if I would create a website for them. I don't know how to create websites. I am not a website person, but I was like, well, this is comms adjacent. So yes, I can do this. It took so much time. I made so little money off it. I think by the end it was like less than minimum wage, because it just took me so much time. And I
Hmm.
promised myself, just because I can do something doesn't mean that this is a good value for me as a business person. I don't want to be a web designer. So for me to take that on as a project just because somebody will pay me for it isn't maybe the best move. So getting really hyper focused on the work we want to do. Although keep being creative. I don't want to discourage you from that. That's a great problem to have, is that you're too creative.
No, I don't, and I don't mind doing the creative stuff every now and then, but it's like sometimes I'm like, Spring, like stop it, like just pay somebody to do this because this is taking up too much of your time. So it's really just me. Like I know what my limits are, and
Mhm.
sometimes I just push those boundaries for no reason at all, just because. And so
We all
I
do
just
it.
have to, yeah, and I just have to start being more like listening to that inner voice that's like, hey, you really probably should outsource this, or you really probably should ask for help with this and
Mhm.
lean into that more. Cause I'm always like, oh no, I don't want to bother anybody. I can just do it myself. And then I'm frustrated and like a crazy person. And then my household is looking at me like, woman,
Yeah.
what is wrong? Like, I just get that look like, what's wrong with you? Like what's going on?
But this is where the community is there to help you, right? You can put that
That's
out there and see who will jump in. I mean, you never know. Maybe there's somebody who's in your network, like your church friend, who is looking for, to get started, and maybe they want say a design project or some other small piece of work that you can share. And then I don't know. I
yeah.
need to do more of that too. Now that we're
Just
talking
really
about it.
leaning into the network that we intentionally set up in the first place, right?
Exactly. We don't have to do all things or be all things to all people.
Yeah. Well, so talk to me about your long-term goals for your company. Like what what kind of influences do you want to have, or like a legacy that you want to leave, especially when you think about your family and your personal goals? Like what are you seeing long term?
My number one goal is to keep this moving and growing, and to always be challenged by the work that I'm doing. I mean, my three main goals, that started off as kind of a joke, but it's become my mantra, is that I just want to have fun, work with people I like, and make money, and do that on my own terms. And as long as I'm hitting those three things, and doing work that I feel is meaningful too, as long as I'm doing those things, then this will always be successful to me, because I'm doing projects that really get me motivated. I'm working with people that I enjoy working with, who start to feel more like friends than clients. And I don't want to go back, if at all possible, to a corporate environment where I don't have as much control there. But I also want to keep growing, because I love teaming up with other smart people. I love being able to handpick the people I work with and bring other entrepreneurs along with me. I said at the beginning, there's enough room for success for all of us. So I love having bigger projects where it's too much for me, and I can go out to the ladies I know and say, like, hey, would you be interested in working on this with me? I'd love to have you. And it's just made it that much richer of an experience working. The legacy question that's such a philosophical one, right? I mean, the legacy, my legacy, I'm not that old, even though I have a lot of years of work experience. uh, but the last few years of doing this, I've grown so much more than I could have ever imagined when I was starting out. And what I hope that I can share by just sharing my story and bringing other people along is that it's possible to break the 9-to-5 model, and create a career you love without compromising your family life. It's really hard. It's really, really hard, but it's so worth it every day. And I hope that my story shows other women and other moms that they don't have to compromise their careers in order to be moms, in order to be present. And I want to be a cheerleader and encourager for as many women as I can.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you here. It's like that's what I was saying earlier in the show, was that I want to encourage women to find their identity outside the home if that's
Right.
what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Some women want their identity within the home, and there is nothing wrong with that. That
Right.
is perfectly fine. But if you have bigger goals, bigger dreams, other career aspirations that you want to make a name for yourself outside of your home, that's okay too. I think a lot of times we get stifled because we get that mom guilt and we're like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like I need to be here for my kids. I don't know if I'll be able to do this and that. And yes, you can. You can be a mom,
Yes.
and as one
Yes.
of my colleagues always says, she says you can be a mom and
I love that.
and is whatever you want it to be. So I love that in terms of what you're saying, and just when you start to think about your legacy and like what it is that you want people to remember you for, or your kids to remember you for, that is how you should really operate on a day-to-day basis. And so, like you said, your mantra is you just want to be able to have fun, work with people you like, and make money. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that is a great mantra, because that is what guides you every single day to doing the work that you do. It makes you feel more fulfilled at the end of the day, which then keeps you keeps your spirits up, keeps you in a great mood, so that when you are interacting with your family, you're in a joyful space. You're not in this,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? Like sometimes in the corporate world, it stresses you out so much, you bring it home
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's miserable because you're
That's
miserable,
true. That's true.
So yes, the entrepreneur life is definitely a challenge, but it is a good challenge, and it is very well worth it. And what I will also say is that you define your success in this world, right?
Yes.
So in the corporate world, success is defined for you with OKRs or
Mm-hmm.
KPIs
Yep.
or whatever they're using to measure your performance. Your success is determined for you. However, when you are your own boss, when you're an entrepreneur, you get to define what that success is. So if you say, I'm only going to work between 9 and 2 or 9 and 3, because I want to be able to drop the kids off, pick them
Mm-hmm.
up, and have time. And within that time frame, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and that is what defines your success. Then there you go. You've just been successful for the day. However, if you're in the corporate world, the success that has already been defined for you, if you
Right.
don't meet those targets, even though you've still done a lot in that time frame or in that day or whatever it is that you're looking at, you're not considered successful because you
Mm-hmm.
haven't hit those predetermined targets that were put there for you. So I don't know. That's just me. That's just my little 2 cents. I'm going to
Well,
encourage everybody to do their own thing, but
and the difference too is in a corporate world, you were saying, it's performance review based, but it's also title based, and, trying to move up a ladder. And if you decide you're not climbing a ladder anymore, you're going to change what that looks like, then you really do get to define what your success is going to be. And, I have 3 sons. I never thought I was going to be a boy mom. I had no idea I was suited to this chaos. It's probably made me a much better business person because I can really handle a lot of craziness thrown my way. But I also just want them to see that mom has her own life and her own pursuits away from them. But when I'm with them, I'm fully present. And I want them to see that mom and dad support one another's career. It's not one or the other, it's both. We support each other. And I really want them to grow up being supportive of women in the workplace and recognizing the sacrifice that it takes, and be supportive, whether it's colleagues or husbands or whatever their life turns out looking like, that starts here with me at home.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's your legacy, Jen.
Mm-hmm. I know. That's what I was saying. You took me to this philosophical place thinking about what my kids are going to say about me in 20 years, 25 years. And I hope that's what they say. I hope they recognize all those good things and don't remember me like, messy hair and feeding them another box of macaroni and cheese because I didn't get to the grocery store yet.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like my life too. Like in the morning, I'm like a mess before I come home and actually get dressed. And so I always think about that too. I'm like, oh, I hope my kids remember like the good stuff and not just
Well,
me.
you know what? They remember that I need my coffee. Like if they see me in the morning without the coffee mug, they're like, Mommy, get your coffee. You know you need it. So I'm hoping they're learning like life lessons as well, not just that, Mom has an issue with caffeine.
Oh, that's cute though. Well, so Jennifer, it has been such a pleasure talking to you today. If anybody wants to reach out with you, to work with you, how do they get in touch with you?
First of all, find me on LinkedIn. Super easy. I'm just Jennifer Lemmert. Come connect with me. I'd love to chat with you. You can also come to my website, jenniferlemmert.com, if you want to learn more about executive branding and employee engagement and the work I do with clients. Love to chat with anyone in Spring's audience.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome, guys. So again, reach out to her on LinkedIn, or you can visit her website at jenniferlemmert.com, and you can find out more about what she does, how she works with people, and how you guys may be able to potentially work together. So I appreciate you being here today, Jennifer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was such a fun way to spend the afternoon.
It was. Thank you. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time on the Spring Forward podcast, guys.